All right, welcome to a special edition of my channel, Grizzly Chathams Publishing. I'm Ike Andrews.
I'm Ike Andrews.
Yeah, and today I'm going to interview. I guess I guess it would be considered one of my biggest influences in writing, whether I realized it or not at the time, is my dad, my old man.
Hmm.
And so we're going to talk about his book that he published back in 2007, I
Yes.
believe, and it's a awesome book. It was really well written, and I love for other people to read it and share it with the world. So Dad, tell us about your background, where you came from, what your story is.
Well, uh, it seems like there's too many years to try to cover in a very brief moment of time about the background. Born and raised in Virginia, in the Appalachian region of Virginia. Very proud of that. At one time, I know growing up, I thought that that was kind of a hick thing to do. But as I've progressed in the years and realized how important your roots are, then it's become something I'm very, very proud about. And somewhat ashamed that I ever felt ashamed about it. So it was the first 21 years of my life spent in that region, and went to high school in Giles County and went to college at Virginia Tech, and then headed off to grad school in Wisconsin. And that's not exactly where I got the bug to be a writer, but I think that's where it really cemented in me. I had had inklings to do creative writing all throughout my teenage years up into my graduation from Virginia Tech. And once I got into graduate school, it became clear that somehow, some way, I wanted to be a writer. So played rugby at that time, and there were a lot of times during practice when all the concentration was up in the front in the forwards. I played back, and so I had many dead spaces of time while they were working and coaching the forwards, and we were waiting for that to happen. And just to entertain myself, I started thinking about how could I make playing rugby a part of a book, a greater book, and interesting. So that's where the genesis of the idea came about, and began working on it off and on throughout my career after got out of grad school. Moved 3 times. First time I went to North Carolina, second time went to Mississippi, and third time went out to the Pacific Northwest, landing in Clarkston, Washington. And while work and raising a family had a lot of very immediate challenges and immediate interests that you need to take care of, the book slowly came together. And once I got to a position where I was doing a lot of traveling, a lot of airplane time, was really when I could really start focusing on the various drafts I had come up with. Because sitting on a plane at for 2 to 3 hours, maybe even longer on some international trips, without the today's amenities like Wi-Fi and in-flight entertainment, gave me a lot of time to revise, edit, and work on the draft that I've been working on for those many years, and finally complete the book.
Yeah, so one of my questions was going to be, how long did it take you to complete the book from like Genesis to when you finally got it published
Yes.
into this version?
Oh man. So like I said, the genesis of the idea was around 1980, and probably, like you say, as the completion, the publishing date was 2007. You're looking at 27 years there. So
Yeah. When did you finally write your first word for the book? What was that? What year was that?
it's hard to pinpoint because I was doing a lot of writing in spare time in grad school. I was took over the helmship of editing the weekly school newspaper, which was more of a, we called it a rag sheet, which was a play on words, because in the paper industry, which is what the industry that my graduate studies supported, um, a rag sheet meant a sheet that was made from old rags, like old bed linens and things like that. So it was never meant to be a news or a news medium per se, but more of a humorous parody kind of reflection of school life from a
Okay,
humorous
yeah.
point of view. So doing a lot of writing at that time, and when I think I had some very, very memorable experiences from playing rugby on some weekends, I would sit down and record those and write those out, and then begin working on the novel. So it was doing a lot of writing at that time, and that wasn't the sole focus.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, you talk about that now. I'm just my origins of writing went with my Grizzly Chathams blog.
Yeah,
How that was more of like a humorous take on life, and
yeah,
where these weird situations where you're trying to kind of keep your an outward persona or facade while inside you're just like what's going on, you know.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
kind of weird because I like seeing you write. I was never like, yeah, I want to be a writer like my old man, or
yeah,
it's just something I kind of fell into. Like I just have fun writing my blog, and then
yeah,
when my, of course, for my book, when Maggie passed away, then I kind of came up with the inspiration. I thought
yeah.
12 years was a long time for my book, but you saying 27, it's a
Well,
little bit of a
I know, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. And like I said, there are a lot of challenges in providing for a family, a lot of career changes and those moves, and a lot of things to have the duties you're supposed to do as a husband or father come first. I suppose if I'd been a full-time writer, it would have been different, but the circumstances weren't like that I could do
yeah.
that. And that idea of being able to, write and express your frustrations while trying to maintain like a calm facade is something I hope to be able to capture in the current book I'm working on, because there's some things that really where I can use that technique to heighten the humor of some of the episodes I'm
Oh, sure.
describing.
So and all that. So what are some of the things, your kind of tricks that? Because I know for a lot of us, I mean, we want to write, but like you
Yeah.
said, you have a family, you have other obligations, and it's not like we can just sit down and write for 8 hours a day because it's not a well-paying profession. But so
My
what are some of the tricks you've learned
my
over the
trick
years?
growing up with you and your two sisters was that I always carved out the very last part of the evening for writing. And that was the part where you had gone to bed and your two sisters had gone to bed. So all the family obligations were taken care of. All the day's work was already behind me. And it would be an hour and a half. But if I was really feeling inspired that evening, it might go on 2 hours, even 3 hours sometimes. You have to be one to sort of cut back on some of the other things you're doing. Like I was really in, and I'm still am into physical fitness and working out and things. But to really get that push to get the book completed, I had to cut back on the amount of intensity and training I did. So I almost kind of had to go onto a maintenance phase. So you had to really give somewhere. Another thing I had to cut back out was I was really aspiring to be a guitar player at the time as well. I think you picked up a guitar before, and you know how fun it can be
Yeah.
to do that and to sing. Well, I came to the point and said, okay, what do you want to do? You want to be a guitar player and performer, or do you want to be a writer? And I said, okay, writer it is. So I actually put away the guitar, and that was it. I really haven't picked it up except when I'm cleaning out the closet and I find it and I open it up to see if it's still in tune, which
Oh
it's
yeah.
usually not. So you have to sacrifice something else that you enjoy doing to be able to focus on that, and you have to be one to cut back on some other areas. Since I couldn't cut back on work, and since I couldn't cut back on my familial duties, that's where I said, okay, I'll just cut back on the level of intensity of training that I've been doing, um,
Yeah.
and use
It's,
that energy for the evenings.
what's your kind of, I guess, your process for writing? Like, how do you? I think everybody has their own type of
Yes,
process. Do you have a
yes, I
certain
do.
process that works for you, or?
What seems to work best for me is to just free associate, write whatever's coming to my mind about what it is I want to write about on a sheet of paper with my hand. Okay, I think there is a direct stimulation with creative areas in the brain with the motion of writing with, long-handed or type. And um, so it gets to be a very messy, almost unreadable first draft. And so I really have to go through it very quickly after after I write it down. Because there've been times when I come back and I look at it, I said, what the heck was I saying here? So first draft, first words out are always handwritten and always on a piece of paper and just as fast as I can. And within a day or two, getting that and start transcribing that onto a word processing program and
Yeah.
stuff.
You're taking the puzzle out of the box, just putting all the pieces of the puzzle out so you can see them all, so you can start organizing it. I
Yeah.
think that's a lot of writers do struggle with that because
Well,
I mean, they have so many thoughts, they just want to put it on paper, and then
yeah.
we have this idea that what we put on the word processor, what we type out, that it has to be exactly the perfect format, and that usually never ends up going well. So you have to
Yeah.
make it messy at first, and
It's
then
funny
you
because
slowly have that.
my freshman English class at Virginia Tech, we had to write compositions, and I fell into that trap where, of course, by then we were handing in type, but it wasn't a word processor; it was a manual typewriter. And I would agonize sometimes for, 30, 45 minutes before I could come up with what I wanted to put down. And then I'd run and just type those two things out and then back off and just do that whole process again. So, yeah, word processing has really helped writers. And I think most writers my age or even younger that still started on typewriters would say that. The other thing I think that's helpful too is at some point very early in the process, kind of just put the high points of where you want your book to go. Just say, okay, this needs to happen, then this needs to happen, and this needs to happen. And that kind of helps you organize into chapters. And once you get chapters kind of organized, you can then get very manageable packets of writing that you can go out and conquer. You just can't go out and do the whole book at a time. But if you can break chapters or even subsections of a chapter piece by piece, then you can accomplish things and you can get that kind of internal reward that, hey, I've done something that contributes to the book.
Yeah, and then at least you get places on the map, so hey, I need to eventually go to this point.
Right.
And you reach this point, then that helps you. Okay, how was somebody
Yeah.
get to this part in the story?
Exactly. You need and I know character needs to have this happen or needs to find this out or this needs to happen without the character knowing it, and so you kind of you make sure. It's just a good way to be thorough. The last thing you want to do is read a second or third draft and realize you've got this big plot gap in it, and you go, oh no.
Yeah, well, yeah. Which is probably why my book took so long. What would your advice for somebody who's new, who wants to start their novel? What would maybe some of the lessons you learned from writing so they don't make the same mistakes or that could help?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think probably try not to spend too much time yourself on making it perfect because you almost never get perfection. But find, after you've done, 3 or 4 maybe work throughs on your draft. Well, I don't know what that right number is. I say 3 or 4. It could be 5 or 6, depending on how.
I lost count after 7 from mine. So
okay, but after you've reached that number, get someone else that can do some good editorial work for you. Don't spend a lot of time trying to make it, right yourself. I think that's what took me so long is I just kept trying to do it all by myself. And finally, I came to the realization I really should get an editor. And that's once I got an editor, I think that's where I got propelled to finish it.
Yeah, that's sometimes hard because writing is pretty vulnerable at times.
Yeah.
I think as writers, a lot of us are self-conscious of our writing because we want it to be good. We don't want somebody to, read something and be like, "Oh, that's garbage," So,
yeah. Well, that's not bad, and I think that's why we spend a lot of time, going through several drafts. And stuff.
So, and I think it is important to find somebody you can trust and that they understand. Hey, this is a process.
Right.
I need some work, so I'm going to guide you on.
Right, and that, I think one of the curses of writing is you tend to be somewhat egotistical at times, and that's probably because you're writing so much about yourself into your characters, even though the character may not be a lot like you at all. And so you tend to want to take criticism as an affront. And so that's another piece of advice is you kind of have to get beyond that. You have to realize if somebody has good intentions, they're not going to be critical to hurt you, they're going to be critical to help you.
Sure. So, all right. Well, I want to ask you a couple of questions about rugby. One of the most enjoyable aspects of your book is like how well you captured the rugby culture and how unique that is, for better for worse. Because I think the thing that stick out are the rugby parties at the end. And so, yes, is that rugby culture? Is that something for like a Midwest Wisconsin thing, or is that global or national? Can you go to like a rugby club in England or Australia and will it be the same way? Or
I would imagine so, although the rugby culture portrayed in the book, The Touch of Life, is probably not the same rugby culture they have today. And I think a lot of that has to do with changing attitudes about what's appropriate behavior in terms of how you express yourself with members of the opposite sex or things like that.
Yeah. Just capturing what that culture was like. It's almost when you watch a book or read it or watch a movie from the 70s or 80s, you're like, oh, that one.
I know, yeah. That book, you have to self-publish because no reputable publisher, I would say, would do something like that, considering how progressive the publishing world has become for most of the big name publishers and such. But you know, if you think about it, though, um, that kind of attitude really, that just that kind of censors the past.
Yeah,
It
oh yeah,
censors what was really going on, and you know, censorship's becoming a big thing now too. The freedom to express yourself, and lots of institutions thinking that, well, no, you don't have a right to say this or that, and policing speech and such. You know, you just got to tell it like it is, even if it's not the way a lot of people like to hear it or want to hear it, because it really happened. And you know, but I think the mistake a lot of people make is when they compare past and present events, they forget the context of the past and why those things happened, and they want to put that comparison in the through the lens of their current view of the environment, and that's sort of that's like rewriting history
yeah.
if you do that.
So I think the best example or the best articulation of that is probably the critical drinker.
Oh
Is it
yeah.
too? He had it as a video. It's one of my favorite videos. It's called "Why the Past Matters," and he talks about the art and the movies could come off as racist or
Yes. Yeah.
risque, and he just he really articulates it. I mean, I won't try to paraphrase it because I think he just that would do disservice to how he's.
Yeah.
But that's a really good video. Maybe I'll put that on as a link. So
Well, funny you should say that because the Laugh channel on TV, one of the few channels I watch every now and then, replayed one of the Naked Gun movies, the very first one, and the amount of censorship they did was just unbelievable. So
it's like,
even
why did you do that? Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's just uh, you know, I've heard people say, you know, like a classic movie like Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein. There's a lot of jokes in there that would just bore people today that are very, you know, progressive or think about those kind of things or be triggered or whatever. So a lot of people say, you know, you better go up and buy the Blu-ray copy of Young Frankenstein and keep it before they censor out or re-edit out the things that are bad. Kind of like George Lucas did with Star Wars when Han Solo fired first.
oh
And
yeah.
you
I mean,
know,
something benign as that.
yeah,
I mean, even if those you know faux pas of the culture from yesteryear are really that bad, you can use that as teachable moments and like, hey, why do they say that? You don't hide the Holocaust. We talk about it. We say, hey, this was a
yeah.
really dark thing in time in history, and this is why it happened. This is how we don't make it happen. Let it happen again. And I
Well,
think
I'm
one of
sure rugby culture is different
yeah,
today. I really am, and it's you know now that's become professionalized in the U.S. There's probably not that kind of you know rambunctiousness, fraternity that exists between opponents of the two teams that may be playing that day. I know the thing that always stood out to me is that it was always said when we were playing the game, you would be basically uh, you know bitter enemies or just fierce enemies of each other for about 80 minutes during a match. And then afterwards, you'd go to the party and be like your best friends. So I don't know if that goes on today.
yeah.
And I'm sure some of the outrageousness that went on during the parties doesn't go on today. But I don't know, it doesn't make them any less fun. Probably they found good ways to have fun then.
Sure.
But I think the thing was that everybody that played rugby and partied enjoyed it, and they enjoyed it in a good spirit.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a kind of a shared camaraderie too with
Very
that.
much so, yeah.
So, and what are some of the other positive aspects that you found playing rugby? Because I think it. I mean, obviously, it had a big impact in your life.
Yeah.
And it shaped who you were. So, what are the things that?
Well, I've told people before that I think playing rugby gave me more of an education, and I also add leading a rugby team because at one time I was the president of the club for a couple of years. Playing and leading the rugby team was more of an education than 8 years of school, of you know, graduate, undergraduate, and postgraduate school. So, what rugby taught me, and I assume this is true of any sport, and yeah, I would wager pretty much it's true of any other sport, that learning how to get along with people, learning how to work as a team, learning how to settle your differences uh, is a far more effective skill to have if you're going to be participating in a work environment where you have to work with other people than all the book knowledge you ever learned about chemistry or engineering or physics or what what stuff like that.
Yeah. And so those kind of, you have those soft skills that you don't really realize. But even I feel like in skateboarding where it's a little different. I mean, it's not such a team sport, but
Yeah,
with skateboarders, they just so like persistent, and they're so like, hey, I have to land this trick. Will not give up until they land this trick, and I think it
yeah.
shapes some of that psyche shapes people into it has a real positive impact.
And I think the character building comes in when you're really hurting or you're really down, you're really behind, and you have to pull everything together to achieve a victory, which doesn't always happen, but when it does, it teaches you a lot about what you can do when circumstances are really adverse.
Sure.
Mhm.
So, who would you recommend rugby to?
Pretty much anybody. We have in Spokane, as you know, uh, two boys that are growing up, very, very bright young men, very intelligent, voracious readers. But I could see where they would really enjoy rugby. Why? Because there's such a diversity of positions in rugby, and learning how to master yours and yet work with others that have very diverse positions is it's a really a mental kind of thing. So I think anybody that wants to play sports but wants to be a little bit more thinking about it, I think that would be a good fit.
Physicality of the game, just getting used to that. Being able to realize, hey, I got knocked down, I got hit, but I can get back up, and it's not so bad. So I think that's probably becomes a big mental barrier for a lot of people, where
Yeah,
there's some personalities that don't mind, they like it rough, but those
yeah,
who haven't been used to that, I think once you go through it a few times and you realize, okay, this isn't as bad as,
right.
and really, I think that's probably
Yeah,
good,
you
big
know,
confidence builder
it
to.
sounds strange, but endurance athletes that just somehow outgrow that ability to compete effectively in endurance sports like cross country or distance running. Uh, and when I mean by outgrow, they start getting bigger and stronger. That would be a great move for them because of the base level endurance needed to play 80 minutes of rugby is something. And I think that was my trajectory too. I was really into distance running growing up. And it wasn't until I got into weightlifting and started putting on some size and muscle that became a little bit more of an opportunity to me. And then it was sort of a self feedback loop. The more I played, the more I found myself getting hurt, knocked down, the more I wanted to get stronger and more durable to play. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And how did you get into rugby? What was the
Oh, it's so there's a little bit of a real life episode in the book, but I was just hadn't been in Wisconsin, I don't think, over a week. I'd moved up there from a 3 week stay in California with some friends that I worked with at a summer camp, and was just sort of looking for something to do one afternoon and was into running, and so I decided I would go for a run and kind of got turned around a little bit. So I was trying to find my way back to where I was supposed to be and ran by this big field where I saw people moving about. And one of the people that was on the field yelled at me, says, "Hey, you." And I didn't know he was talking to me. I thought maybe it was talking to somebody else. So I turned and looked to see if there was somebody behind me. And he goes, "No, you." I go, "Me?" He goes, "Yeah, you." And I was sort of, dumbfounded. I didn't know what to say. He goes, "Do you want to play a real sport?" And I said, "Well, yeah, yes, yeah."
it's like,
Why
all
could I
right,
say
why
no?
not?
All right, get out here. You look like a bat. Get over there. Listen to him. So pretty much it was just,
Like, okay, you did
yeah.
maybe.
I mean, if you think about it, and if you have a faith that God works all things in your life, it's a destiny thing.
Yeah, maybe it was like the Holy Spirit moving through him, and it's like, whether you knew it or not, it's like, hey, Ike Moon needs to come over and
Yeah,
do rugby.
well,
Yeah,
I just happened to get turned around and get to a place where they happened to be practicing, and what are the odds? And there it was.
so I think it worked out for.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it was good.
it was good. It was very challenging not knowing the rules, and that was probably the source of much angst the very first year. But once I got familiar with the rules and what I should do, it got better. At least the teammates were very understanding if you messed up at
Oh
that
yeah,
time, and they were also very helpful about explaining things.
they don't want to.
That's
tear
true.
people
And that's
down.
the
And
other thing. It was a supply and demand thing for the rugby club I started out playing with because they needed players.
sure.
So I'm sure they were glad to take anybody they could
Yeah,
get.
yeah.
So,
Before we wrap up, I was you mentioned you have a current writing project. So do you want to talk about that real quick? And
well, sure. So I'm working on a fictitious story about a an employee of a large paper company that gets asked to go with the sales and marketing team to assess the potential for selling their product over in China, as China is opening up to being more of an economic powerhouse in the mid 90s. So it's going to be a book about lots of intrigue, lots of danger, lots of hilarity, um, just about somebody, one young father's struggle to get through 2 weeks of almost like an Alice in Wonderland type environment and get home safely back to his family that he misses
yeah,
while he's away.
because I don't know if I want to giving anything away, but it's based on experience you had growing up, and it was
Yeah,
the stories you told from that. I don't. Maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe once you write it, we'll do the next
that sounds good.
interview. But yeah, you
Yeah.
had some wild stories, and it was
You know, you got back earlier to what would you encourage a young writer to do? That was one of the earlier questions. You know, one of the best things you can do is just live life and live it to the fullest, and let those impressions just become a part of you. Because once they do, they're always there. You can always, communicate them, write them down later, and
yeah.
things like that.
The thing is, I mean, with write, I mean, you just can't sit in your office, the whole day and write. Just
Yeah,
you have to live because that's where you get your inspiration from.
right.
I think
Yeah,
most people they walk down the street, let's
yeah,
say the Beatles, they saw circus signs, so they came up with Sergeant Pepper's,
yeah.
that type of stuff. So yeah, you have to live life and then get that inspiration.
That's
And
true. And we haven't mentioned that I wrote a nonfiction book called Lessons from the Trail, and it was a way to bring glory to God through an event that was so tragic and so heartbreaking. That was my best friend getting killed in an automobile accident. Of course, unexpectedly. Every automobile accident is unexpected. But he was such a good brother in Christ and such a wonderful mountain biking partner. And ended up writing a book about our exploits on the trail, but found a way where that weaved in and out of the grief and the way I had to come about bringing or delivering a eulogy for this man uh, with the week after it happened. And all that stuff was from experience. All that stuff is lived. There's nothing imagined about that. And of course, it's painful to write when you're writing about things like that hurt, but it's stuff that you really don't forget. And the thing earlier advice too about doing a lot of writing and writing things down. I had just recorded so many things that we had done through various emails or just through inspirational things that I had a big trove of material already to work from, just from kind of journaling through multiple media, like through emails or through personal diaries or little vignettes of stories I thought would be cool to write down. Yeah, live
yeah,
the life, and it impresses you, it stays with you.
all right. So any final words before we wrap up, or is last things that words of advice, cheap
Uh,
shots?
just maybe, hopefully they'll make the movie of the Touch of Life someday, and the Critical Drinker gives it a good
Oh
review.
yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, no, I think this would. I mean, I read this and
Yeah,
you see like this would make a
I think it'd
really
make a good
excellent book.
episodic
Um,
series, kind of like Yellowstone was. There's enough material there for pretty 2 seasons
yeah.
of an, and then maybe some creative person can extend it once it gets to
Right.
the
Yeah.
climax and stuff.
So all right. All right. So thanks everybody for joining us. It's the Touch of Life re-released.
New cover too.
Yeah, new cover. I read it twice. I enjoyed it even more the second time. Even think I even got a little emotional at the end of it. It was kind of funny. It's like like being older than the protagonist and growing up. And yeah, it kind of impacted me a different way. But Touch of Life by my old man Ike Andrews, available on Amazon.com. Thanks again for joining us, and God bless.